So on page 33, we have to write a statement to show the congruent segments. So taking a look at number 1, we have that line AC and line BC are tangent to circle O. And then we need to show the congruent segments. So if you remember from our notes, let me just kind of go back to the notes so you can see. Right over here, the 2 segments over there are going to be congruent. So going back to this segment, which I will name in a second, and this segment are congruent. So let me write this out. AC is this first one. And you put a line on top of it without the arrows because this is a segment. The arrows means it goes on forever, but without the arrows, it means it starts at A and it stops at C, and that's it. It doesn't keep going. So we're talking about a segment, so no arrows. AC is congruent to BC. Okay, and I'm going to pause it here for a second because I got a question, I think. Okay, so we have that line segment AC is congruent to line segment BC, and that's all. So I guess I could highlight this to be a little bit more clear. AC is this line segment, and BC is this line segment. Okay, yeah, I should color code it so that you guys know. So those 2 line segments are congruent. Let's do the same thing for number 2. Okay, we're gonna go a little bit quicker just because I think you guys will get the hang of this. We have another 2 tangents. Then we have this first one, XZ. If it would just let me write. XZ is congruent to WZ. And you can put ZW, it's fine. I'm just putting WZ just because. So XZ is this one. ZW is that one. And I'm sure some of you are already working ahead because you're like, I got this. This is easy. That's great. If you guys are still following along with me, that's also great. As long as you understand what's going on. And if you don't, please ask a question. Okay, so for this one, we have RS. Oops. Line segment RS is congruent to line segment RT. And you could have said SR, TR, it doesn't matter. It's still the same segment. So RS, oops. RS is this one. RT is that one. Okay? So you start at the point of intersection and you end the segment at the point of tangency, or vice versa. Okay, and now the picture is just a little bit different. There's a line across there, but it really doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. We have MP or PM, whichever one you want, is congruent to NP. Those 2 line segments are congruent. You have MP over here, and we have PN over here. Okay, so we just did 4 of them. Do any of you have questions about these 4 that we just did? Because for 5 and 6, I'm going to go ask if you guys can participate with it. So any questions on 1, 2, 3, 4? So if you guys have no questions, we're going to do 5 and 6. Let's have you guys type in the chat so that you guys can show me which 2 line segments on number 5 are congruent. Which pages are we doing? 33 and 34. 33. We're starting on 33. Okay, and then somebody says DE and FE. Correct. Good. Let me just write that down. Line segment DE is congruent to line segment FE. So let me highlight those. DE is this top one. FE is this bottom one. Oops, and I didn't write the segment. There you go. Good job. Thank you to the student who private messaged me the answer. Yes, you are correct. Okay, so 5 is done. Last one for this page is number 6. We have that GH and GI are tangents to circle O. So somebody type in the chat. Oh, somebody already did. HG and GI. You are correct. Let me highlight them so that people can see. HG is this top one, and GI is this bottom one. So it seems like you guys are getting the hang of this and knowing which segments are congruent, so good job. Any questions on 5 and 6? Okay, so remember, if you do have a question, interrupt me. It's not a big deal. I can't really see your faces, so it's not like class time. So you just got to speak up, interrupt me if you got a question. Let's go on to the next page, which is page 34 now. So now we're on page 34. Okay. So now we're going to calculate the measure of each angle and explain your reasoning. Okay, so if EF and GF, let me just highlight those. If EF and GF are tangent segments, what is the measure of angle? I'll do this in green. Oops. Sorry, I'm trying to use a pen. EGF, so we want this angle. So we want to find the measure of this angle. So according to our notes, when you have these two sides being congruent, I'll mark them in, let's mark it in purple. These two are congruent, then that means those two angles that are opposite of them must also be congruent. So really those two green angles that I put, they are congruent because you have two congruent sides in the triangle. Then you have two congruent angles in the triangle. Let me remind you on the notes where that's from. Over here. If you have two congruent sides, then you have two congruent angles. If you have two congruent angles, you have two congruent sides, okay? So here it is on the notes. We're going to apply it now to this picture over here. So we have this triangle with two congruent purple sides and two congruent green angles. Remember also that the three angles in a triangle add up to 180. So our first angle over here is 64 plus, let's just call it x because I don't know what else to call it, plus x, because both those green angles are equal to x. When you add up all three angles of a triangle, you will get 180, according to our notes from like last two sections. So when you add up all three angles of a triangle, 64, x, and x, it will add up to 180. Now we need to solve for x. So let's simplify this. We have 64 plus x is just 2x equals 180. And then to get the x by itself, we're going to subtract 64 from both sides. We'll be left with 2x is equal to 116. And then to get the x by itself, we need to divide by 2. And then our x will be equal to 58 degrees. And then you can just box this, because x is our green angle, and that's what they were looking for. They were looking for that angle, and we call it x, and our x is 58. So our green angle is 58. Okay, so I just did one example with you guys so far. Did you guys have any questions?
Oh, wait, so how do we get the x's again?
Okay, so I call the two green angles x, right? And then you have to add up the three angles to equal 180. That's what I did in this step. So 64 is this angle, And then our two green angles are x. So 64 plus x equals 180. And then from that equation, you get to solve for x.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. We're going to do the same process onto the next one so that it can help you out also. But before we do that, any more questions on this one? Okay, let's do the next one. We have HI and JI are tangent segments, and that means they must be congruent. So I'm going to mark them as congruent like that. And since they are congruent, we have two equal angles over here based on our notes. And so I'm going to label those angles X just because. Now they want us to find the measure of angle HJI. So which one is HJI? It's this one on the bottom. Okay, so that's HJI. And just remember that HJI on the bottom is the same thing as JHI on the top, but specifically they want us to find the bottom angle. Just remember that the bottom angle is the same as the top angle because we have two equal sides, so we have two equal angles. Now we're going to add up all three angles. So we have our 48 angle. Actually, I'm going to write it a little bit more to the side so I have space. 48 plus the next one, which is x, plus the last one, which is also x, equals 180. Because always, always, in a triangle, you add up the three angles on the inside, or three interior angles. If you add it up, it'll equal 180. So we're going to simplify this. We have 48 plus 2x equals 180. Okay, and then what can we do to get rid of the 48? Add it, subtract it, what is it?
Subtract it.
Yes, subtract it. So we're going to minus 48 on both sides. And we get 2x is equal to 132. And then how do we get rid of the 2?
Divide.
So we're going to divide by 2 on both sides. And then, hold on, there we go. We get x is equal to 66 degrees. Okay, so then that's our answer for this one. Oh yeah, and I see that, yes, somebody's already getting the answers in the chat, which is great. It means you understand it. But not everybody understands it probably, so any questions? Okay, if you do have a question, remember, interrupt me. But if you don't, then we're going on. So for the next one, we have a slightly different setup. So we have KM and LM are tangent segments. I'm just going to mark them as congruent. If those two are congruent, then we have these two congruent angles as well. Okay, and then notice that if our bottom and top angle are congruent and the bottom angle is 63, the top one must also be 63. Okay, because they are congruent, so they're the same. And they are the same because the opposite sides are congruent. And then we are left to find the measure of KML. So I'm going to do that in, I don't know what color I haven't used. Okay, I'll just use black, it's fine. KML is this one over here. So this black angle is the one that they want us to find, KML. And I'm just going to call this X. We're just going to keep calling it X because it's really, it's the most basic letter. So, okay, so we're going to add up all three angles and make it equal to 180. So we have 63 plus 63 plus X equals 180. We're going to simplify this. So 63 plus 63, that's 126. Plus X equals 180. And then we get to take away 126. And we get X is equal to 54. Good job. I'm saying good job because somebody typed 54 in the chat. Okay, so this is how you do this type of problem. It's very similar to the first one. It's just a slightly different setup. Any questions on this? Okay, let's do the next one. I'm just going to zoom up a little bit. Oops. Okay. Then we have NP and QP are tangent segments, so I mark them as congruent. And then that means that these two angles must also be congruent. So I'm going to label the bottom one as 71 as well because they are congruent. And then what is the measure of angle NPQ? So that would be this one over here. And I'm just going to call it X again. So once again, we're going to add everything up. Top one plus bottom one plus the side equals 180. So just let me write it. I think it's just too close to the edge of the screen. There you go. Is equal to 180. We're going to simplify this. So we're going to add up the 71 and the 71. That's 142. Plus X equals 180. Then what do we do to get rid of the 142?
Subtract it.
Subtract it, yes. You get X is equal to 38. Yes, and someone already got that in the chat, which is great. Good job. So for anybody else, does anybody have a question on this at all? Okay, just make sure you do ask me if you have a question, but let's go on to number 5 and 6, and then we would be done for our skills practice, which is really good because we're right on schedule. Okay, so we have AF and VF are tangent segments. What is the measure of angle AVF? Okay, so let me write AF and VF are tangent segments, and they want AVF, so they want this angle. Remember that these two green angles are congruent, so I'm just going to call them both X. But specifically, they want us to find AVF. Okay, so using our formula again, let's add up the three angles. So X plus 22 equals, what should they equal?
180.
180, perfect. And then simplifying it, we get 2x plus 22 equals 180. What do we do with the 22?
Subtract.
Subtract it. Good. You get 2x is equal to 158. What do we do with the 2?
Divide.
Divide. You get x is equal to, I don't want to do that in my head right now. What is it, guys? 79, good. Somebody typed it in the chat. Great, great. 79 degrees. Okay, any questions on this one? We're having a lot of internet issues today, I can see. At least 5 of you have been kicked out and rejoined. So good thing I record these, right? Okay. Let's do our last one. Remember, if I'm going too fast, just tell me and I'll slow down. We have RT and MT are tangent segments, so they are congruent. Next, we know that since those are congruent, these must be congruent as well. So I'll label that as 33 degrees. And they want the measure of RTM. So they want that one. We're going to call it X. So adding all three up, 33 plus 33. Where do I have space here? Plus the last one equals 180. Simplifying it, we get 66 plus X equals 180. Sorry, I wrote the first one on top of the words Carnegie Learning, so I just wrote the bottom one like a lot lower so it's clearer. My bad. What do we do with the 66?
Subtract.
Subtract it. Great. We get x is equal to, what is it? 114. Good. Somebody typed it in the chat in case you guys are wondering. So good job. All right. So that was it for our skills practice. Does anybody have any questions on it? All right. Sounds like a no. So I'm going to stop the notes now.